I never thought I would find myself standing in the middle of my own home, listening to words that would strip away every ounce of trust one had built. My name is Ethan, I'm 36, and I run a modest fitness studio in Phoenix, Arizona. For as long as I can remember, I have lived with the conviction that marriage was meant to be rooted in honesty and loyalty. That belief wasn't just shaken. It was obliterated on a Saturday afternoon when I walked in earlier than expected and heard my wife, Megan, speaking to my sister, Lisa. I had come home with the simple intention of surprising Megan with lunch. The house was unusually still, carrying the kind of quiet that made me uneasy. On the counter in the kitchen sat Megan's phone, tilted against a coffee mug, screen lit as though it had just been used. From the living room, through a door left slightly ajar, I caught the sound of her laugh, light, unguarded, the kind that made me pause in suspicion rather than comfort. Curiosity pulled me closer, though a heavy sense of dread already tightened in my chest. And then, as if the universe wanted to etch cruelty into my bones, I heard the words that cleaved through me. Honestly, I'd never date him if I weren't related to him. He's just so boring. She laughed again. My sister's chuckle followed. It was casual, almost careless, but to me it was a declaration, a dismissal of everything I had poured into our life together. For a moment, I stood motionless, as though my body needed time to accept the sting of betrayal before my mind could catch up. The cruelty of it wasn't in the joke alone, it was the indifference. The way she could discard me so easily, so thoughtlessly, and do it in conversation with my own sister. The shock bled into anger, and anger hardened into something sharper, resolve. I realized then that charging into the room in fury would only give her the control she assumed she already had. She expected me to argue, to defend myself, to beg for scraps of respect. That was not going to happen. I steadied myself, let the silence fill me, and walked into the living room. Megan's eyes flicked toward me. For a fleeting second, her expression faltered, but she tried to pull the mask back into place, as if she could smother the truth with composure. Lisa's presence stiffened in the corner, her lips parted in surprise but no words forming. I didn't say anything at first. I simply sat down, the weight of my presence filling the space. The longer I kept quiet, the heavier the air grew. Megan shifted, her confidence beginning to unravel with each second that ticked by. Finally, I met her eyes with deliberate calm and spoke. "Megan, pack your bags." The simplicity of those 4 words struck harder than any raised voice could. I watched the shock ripple across her face, the disbelief as it dawned on her that the control she thought she wielded had just slipped away. She had imagined an argument, a scene filled with pleading and justification. Instead, she was met with composure and certainty. She froze, towel clenched in her hands, and stammered without sound. Lisa looked between us, caught between family ties and the raw truth that had just exploded in the open. Megan tried to gather herself, reaching for an explanation. Her lips parted, but I silenced the attempt with nothing more than my presence. I stood, walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and returned as if her betrayal hadn't been worth raising my voice over. The sound of the glass meeting the coffee table was louder than her breathing. When I spoke again, it was calm, deliberate. It's remarkable what people will say when they think no one is listening. The words landed with precision. Megan's eyes darted, searching for a way to soften the blow, but her nervous flicker told me she knew the damage was permanent. Lisa remained silent, her discomfort visible, though I could see the weight of the truth settling in her too. Our marriage, I continued, my tone steady, was supposed to be built on trust. You shattered that with a few words, words you can't take back. I'm not raising my voice because I don't need to. I already know exactly what I have to do. Megan reached out, her voice trembling. "Ethan, it was a joke. I didn't mean it like that." I shook my head slowly. Every excuse she tried to form only highlighted how little she valued the bond we once had. The laughter, the smug tone, the way she had confided in my sister, it had all ripped away the illusions I had been clinging to. I walked toward the bedroom door and gestured firmly. "Pack your bags," I repeated, this time with no pause, no room for negotiation. Her face drained of color. She knew then that there would be no bargaining. For weeks, I had felt her detachment, sensed the shift in how she treated me. But now, With those words hanging between us, I no longer doubted. Lisa shifted uncomfortably, her silence reinforcing the gravity of the moment. I wasn't raising hell. I was commanding the room with clarity. By the end of that afternoon, Megan was packing her belongings. Her confidence was gone, replaced with pale regret. I didn't gloat. I didn't crumble. I sat on the couch, calm and deliberate, watching the truth play itself out. It wasn't chaos, it was resolution. The days that followed were quiet, but the silence was different now. It was mine. The house felt emptier, yes, but it also carried a sense of order, of control. Megan's attempts to reach out, her texts, calls, even her guilt-laden messages, met with either silence or brief, detached replies. There was no need to argue, no need to seek closure from her. The evidence of her betrayal had already closed the chapter. Lisa and I rebuilt what had been strained. She had been forced into a cruel position, caught between her brother and his wife, but in the end she stood on the side of truth. Her presence in that moment had turned words into evidence, betrayal into undeniable fact. That shared understanding deepened our bond. When it came to dividing the life Megan and I had built, the process was clean. Legally, she had no ground to stand on. The house, the finances, the business. Each piece fell into place under terms that reflected fairness and justice. There were no theatrics, no drawn-out battles, only the cold efficiency of decisions made from a place of clarity. One evening, sitting alone in the living room, I allowed myself to reflect on how everything had unfolded. Betrayal has a way of exposing weakness, but it also strips away illusions and reveals strength you didn't realize you had. I had faced manipulation, indifference, and cruelty. Instead of crumbling, I had responded with patience, precision, and decisive action. Megan thought she could control the narrative with arrogance and dismissiveness. She gambled on my silence, on my tolerance. But she underestimated me. She mistook calm for weakness. In the end, she miscalculated, and the cost was everything she had assumed she could take for granted. Her departure was not my loss. It was my turning point. What she left behind was not just a house filled with echoes, but a life reclaimed. The scars remain, but they are marks of survival, of strength gained. As I moved forward, one truth stood above all. Power isn't handed over. It's recognized, claimed, and defended by those willing to act with clarity. Betrayal tried to reduce me, but instead it forged me into someone stronger. And that strength, that calm certainty, is mine to keep forever.